Video game lore lends itself to interpretation. There's a whole lot going on in a game, and frankly, you can take it in unexpected ways. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Gameranx, 10 horrifying video game fan theories. Starting off at number 10, there's a theory that in Fallout 4 there is a plague coming. Now, the game has a fairly straightforward plot, but there is a lot of room for interpretation in Fallout 4, just by nature, like by including stuff like synths, nearly perfect robot copies of humans. That makes it so that there's going to be theories about who is and isn't a synth. And one of the most popular theories is that your player character is actually a synth. That's only scratching the surface of the mysterious elements of Fallout 4 though, and while I could easily spend time focusing on the synth angle, instead let's look at one of the lesser known fan theories that is especially horrifying in a post-COVID world. In the lore of the series, the world was in a pretty terrible state before the actual apocalypse happened. There was social unrest, endless wars over limited resources, and a highly contagious virus simply called the New Plague, which was sweeping the nation. Now, eventually a cure was derived that maybe wasn't great in terms of its effects. It was the precursor of the FEV, the Forced Evolutionary Virus, which is the origin of the super mutants. FEV comes up a lot in the series, but the plague that precipitated its creation is not mentioned a whole lot. That is, unless you believe the fan theories, because then there's a mission called Long Road Ahead. It's a companion mission for MacCready where he tells you about a mysterious illness affecting his son and that blue boils are popping up all over his body. Another name for the new plague was the blue flu, so I think you might be starting to see where I'm going with this. The actual descriptions of the new plague from Fallout doesn't match what's described in Fallout 4, but that could just be creative license. The actual goal of the mission is to find a cure in the medtech facility, which apparently only gets you one dose, which would be fine if this mysterious illness was just affecting MacCready's kid.
Holy crap, we actually did it! We just gave Duncan a fighting chance to live. I don't know how I'll ever be able to pay you back for this.
But there's other characters described as coming down with similar symptoms. If the plague is as bad as previous Fallout games make it sound, the Commonwealth is horribly unprepared for the level of sickness and death that's about to descend upon it because of this plague. It's never explicitly said where the illness originated from or if there are any more cures out there, and if this is the only one, it's possible your character just condemned the entire Legion to a slow motion death sentence. Or maybe it's just supposed to be some unknown illness that doesn't matter. Knowing Bethesda, it could really go either way. At number 9 is Mass Effect's indoctrination theory. I don't think I'm going too far in saying the conclusion of Mass Effect was divisive. A lot of people hated the way the third game ended, and they were looking for something, like just anything to justify the fandom. And that's how indoctrination theory was born. In the collective disillusionment of an entire fan base, one of the most famous fan theories out there, not just because of how often it's repeated, but because of how insidiously plausible it actually is. It's such a common and widespread theory that many people just treat it as fact, or at least intended as the actual reading you're supposed to take, which is not the case. Folks are free to interpret the ending however they want, obviously, but BioWare has never directly said that this theory is intended to be the thing. To explain the theory, I gotta lay a little groundwork. The Mass Effect games, the way the Reapers control people, they have this process called indoctrination.
It's called indoctrination. Direct exposure to the signal turns you into a mindless slave, like the Solarian test subjects. But there's collateral damage, too.
It's intentionally subtle so that the person being controlled isn't aware of it. Throughout the series, your character probably comes into contact with the Reaper technology more than anyone else, and somehow they manage to keep control. Well, at least according to the main narrative. The indoctrination theory says otherwise. Depending on who you ask, either Shepard slowly loses control over the 3 games, or they're rendered unconscious and fully indoctrinated during the finale of Mass Effect 3. Either way, the theory posits the 3 choices of destruction, control, and synthesis. They're actually a trick. The information presented to you is wrong because the Reapers want you to make a choice that keeps them alive. That's why the otherwise obvious choice of destruction, where you kill all the Reapers, is rendered red, aka renegade, aka evil in the final game, and the choice of control, where you control the Reapers, which in almost any other game would be considered an evil choice, is rendered blue. Now, it's not just that the ending choices are weird and unsatisfying, but instead, it's the Reapers trying to trick you. And it's actually pretty creepy, if you think about it. The entire ending sequence is an illusion that's meant to make you think you're doing the right thing, when in reality, you're dooming humanity. It's a theory that does make a certain amount of sense, and adds a layer of horror to the entire sequence that, honestly, it's kind of lacking any stakes. So, it makes sense that people latched onto it.
Can't take that chance. No chance. I need to do what it says. I have to. Let me out. Let me out! Let me out! Let me out! Let me out!
And number 8, in Silent Hill 2, the theory that Mary is in the car. It's another one that's just accepted as fact by fans, but may or may not actually be the case. In Silent Hill 2, you play as James, a man drawn to the town of Silent Hill, after receiving a letter from his wife telling him to meet her there. Only problem, his wife is dead.
A dead person can't write a letter. Mary died of that damn disease 3 years ago.
What starts out as a supernatural mystery gets a lot more real as time goes on, and ultimately it's revealed that James' wife suffered a debilitating illness, and James killed her after she asked him to end her suffering. It's some serious, grim stuff, but if you ascribe to this theory, it gets worse. The game makes it clear that James either repressed his role in his wife's death or is in denial, which is why he acts like an old letter telling him to go to Silent Hill is real. The denial may even be worse, because it's possible he's got his wife's dead body in the car with him. People have said it's in the truck, while the director of the second game, Masahiro Ito, has said the body is actually in the back seat. This is one of those rare fan theories that's actually commented on by the creator, and while his tweet sounds like a pretty clear-cut confirmation, he's also been known to jerk people around with their theories, and other people who worked on the game have contradicted what he said. Either way, it's a pretty nasty secret, just hiding inches away from you at the start of the game. If you could just open up the trunk and see what's inside, we'd know for certain if there's a rotting corpse there, but there's not really any way to find out. And number 7 is Detroit Become Human. The theory is that the main characters are never actually self-aware. Throughout Detroit Become Human, the androids you play as and encounter are shown in a positive light. Their struggles are made to be instantly relatable. It's pretty easy to immediately accept the premise. They're guys just like us that just have glowing circles in their heads. In the world of the game, the androids that become self-aware gain the ability to think for themselves. They're called deviants, and that immediately connects their plight to real-world marginalized groups out there. Everything the game shows us makes it pretty clear we're supposed to think of the androids as basically humans who are just fighting for their rights. As AI becomes more mainstream and a greater understanding of how AI tends to function becomes more clear, the premise that androids were created sentient but their programming limited them starts to look more and more implausible. Without getting too deep in the weeds talking about AI, AI models are not sentient. They're big logic strings. We don't know exactly how they work or exactly how neural networks process data. We know that it's pretty close to how a brain works, but that's not saying that they have the capability to think, because it's if this then that logic. It's probability. When you ask ChatGPT something, it's not creatively giving you an answer. It's actually running a probability check regarding what word would more plausibly come next based on the previous word said. So if that AI in the game is anything like the AI we're experiencing in real life, this theory says that no matter how sympathetic and human-seeming the robots are, they're actually just suffering from a virus, which is what the company says. These seemingly freed machines are just pieces of property that have gone haywire, and that's an unsettling thought because it almost feels like you're being fooled. Or imagine it from the robot's mind. They believe they're intelligent beings, but they're not. There's probably a Black Mirror episode like that, and if there isn't, maybe that's a good premise. The game really does go out of its way to make you think that yes, these robots have intelligence, but this is a fan theory that's hard to ignore because of the real world implication. And man, is it interesting. At number 6 is Majora's Mask, the idea that the game is a metaphor for the 5 stages of grief. There's a ton of blank was actually dead the whole time theories out there. Seriously, there are a dime a dozen, but this may be one of the first, at least one of the first that's actually a little plausible. How the theory goes is that instead of the game starting with Link going into the Lost Woods and getting lost, which leads to him arriving at a new country of Termina, he goes into the Lost Woods and dies. It might seem totally arbitrary, but there is actually something to this theory. theory, because it's said that if you go into the Lost Woods without a ferry, you're doomed to become a Stalfos, aka a skeleton. And Link didn't start the game with a ferry, so he's a skeleton. Everything that happens afterward is just his final hallucination before death, or maybe he's in limbo, or something like that. The part of this theory that ties it together is how each major area reflects one of the 5 stages of grief. Clocktown is denial, where everyone's partying and pretending like the end of the world isn't happening. The swamp is anger, the mountains are bargaining, the bay is depression, and Icona is acceptance. These actually do map pretty well onto each zone. So even if you don't like the whole Link is actually dead thing, the metaphor angle still holds up. Dead the whole time theories are pretty tired at this point, but Majora's Mask is such a mournful and creepy game anyway, it kind of just fits into the whole identity. And even if Link is not already dead the whole time, I totally buy the 5 stages of grief thing. At number 5, in Dark Souls, the idea that the Kingseeker is deceiving you. The Souls games are so vague and unclear that even the basic plot points, basically any discussion of them eventually starts getting into fan theories. At least this one, though, has a lot of basis in the actual game. At a certain point in the first Dark Souls, you meet this weird-looking serpent called Kingseeker Frampt. This guy's here to give you some actual exposition towards your goal. He wants you to gather the Lord's souls, open the passage to the kiln of the first flame, and link the fire. Basically, you're restoring light to the world. All sounds pretty heroic, and it seems like everything he's telling you is true. The thing he neglects to inform you is that, oh yeah, there's another serpent out there who has a different idea in mind. You can go through the entire game without ever finding Dogstalker Kath, but if you do, then they'll give you a lot more information as to what's actually going on as compared to Frampty. Yeah, old Frampty might be trying to trick you, and that's what the fan theories are saying.
As the primordial serpent, I implore you to defeat them and claim their souls. Let there be no guilt. Let there be no vacillation.
We know for certain he's not being totally honest about what it takes to link the flame, which is to stand in the forge for eternity as fuel for it. It's likely that he's also connected to the illusional at Orlando, the home of the gods, that's actually decrepit and abandoned. It's safe to say that your guide doesn't have your best interest at heart, but those are lies of omission. The question is it worse than that? There is already something creepy about this dude, but there's just something really unpleasant about a character who, in any other game you could trust, but here there's just something not right about him. There is enough here to condemn him, but they leave things open-ended enough so you're never 100% clear whether the Kingseeker is trying to help you or manipulate you into doing its bidding. At number 4 is Animal Crossing's abduction theory. The Animal Crossing games are 2 things: ridiculously wholesome and relentlessly strange, which is a powerful combo that leads to some pretty insane fan theories. The abduction theory is by far and away the most popular because it does explain so much, and it's also pretty creepy. The basic theory states that rather than being a kid moving into some kind of fantasy town with animal buddies, you're a kidnapping victim that's been brainwashed and forced to serve as slave labor in this rural town run by cultists, or something like that. I don't know if the details are completely correct there. Now, there's not a lot of evidence to support the theory other than it's creepy, but at least in the first game, there's a few clues that point to something like this. Maybe not necessarily this exactly, but something. For one thing, the first game has a turtle character named Cap'n, which is based on the Japanese yokai, the Kappa. These things are in town to take children against their will and have been depicted as creepy by a lot of Japanese media. And then there's Tom Nook. Everybody likes talking about Tom Nook as a greedy guy, but it may not be greed. The debt could be a tool as opposed to the goal. And he starts piling that on you the second you get into town. He's like that crazy. It's easy to read what happens as being indentured servitude or worse. Now, taking a cute game and imagining some kind of dark underbelly is pretty standard for these kinds of fan theories, but spending enough time with these games, it gets harder and harder to shake the feeling there's something wrong in the world of Animal Crossing, even if it's not exactly this. And number 3, in Skate 3, you die, or perhaps you're in a coma. Of all the games out there, you'd think Skate 3 would be pretty low on the list of possible horrifying fan theories, but here we are. There's already something uncanny about the world of Skate 3 that makes it feel like purgatory or limbo. There's hardly any people, the city connects together in a few weird ways, and everything just plays out a little too perfectly for your character. All this after somehow surviving a massive fall during the opening cutscene of the game. And somehow Isaac is back, even though the previous game straight up said that he died in an earthquake. What's more plausible, that he somehow came back to life, or that you're in a fever dream or in limbo? It's possible the developers just changed their minds and retconned his death, but ignore that. That's irresponsible game development, and we're not going to pretend that that's a thing. We're going to say that there's information inside the game that justifies any of these decisions, okay? Right? I might be in termina myself, but I think there's enough to go on that's possible to think of the game as some kind of death fantasy, because it's literally the skateboarder's paradise. The game already feels like you're kind of a ghost in the world, but then the starting crash, I feel like, cements it. Maybe it's the right thing, even if it's not the intended thing. And number 2, a commonly held fan theory about Pikmin is that it takes place on a post-apocalyptic Earth. Now, the Nintendo franchise is mostly about herding around cute little plant guys, but the theory is that it's set in a desolate, abandoned Earth hundreds of years in the future. And honestly, it's really easy to see how someone might think that. I pretty much subscribe to this. I really enjoy the Pikmin games, and you find all these eventual signs of civilization, particularly in the latter games. It adds an air of melancholy to an otherwise really upbeat game. You find like human stuff littered around, trash, old bicycles and stuff like that, buckets. It adds an air of melancholy to an otherwise upbeat game. According to the developers though, it's not post-apocalyptic. They say the titular planet is called Pikmin Planet, but I don't know, up until Pikmin 4, which kind of throws a monkey wrench in the theory, it's basically how everything looks to me. And finally, at number 1, the cyclical universe theory. There's nothing horrifying about Borderlands, right? The first game was before things started to get real jokey, but it was far from serious. So what kind of theory could people come up with to make it horrifying? All the credit in this one goes to a 10-year-old Reddit post made by somebody named Amidemimus, who paints a surprisingly compelling picture of Borderlands as some kind of I have a mouth and must scream scenario on a grand scale. It all ties to the game's new you stations, which is where you respawn when you die. No matter what you do, these things bring you back to life, even if you're out of money, which makes it so you're technically immortal and you're forced to keep living no matter what. They point out the many bizarre things about this setting, like the guy who can't remember his wife's name, the single NPC in Firestone, the physical deformities on the enemies. They figure they're all side effects of the revival process after many years. Like, people have been around so long they forget who they actually are. Bandits have gone mad and are slowly becoming more deformed as the new you machines start to break down. To add to the theory, you can find Tannis' writing on the walls of her lab going about how reality is cyclical and repeats, which could mean that this has been going on for thousands of years, and everyone on the planet is just trapped in an endlessly recursive cycle of violence. In the world of Borderlands, if you want to imagine the future, think of Claptrap dabbing on a human face forever.
Now that your DNA is registered, you have the best in horrific death and dismemberment insurance. Should a fatal incident occur, your new you will appear at the nearest station.
Got a bonus one for you too. Final Fantasy VIII's Squall is Dead theory, which has its very own website, squallisdead.com. And to be frank, Final Fantasy VIII just starts getting weird by the end. And no, not JRPG weird. It's JRPG weird from the start. It gets weird by the end. It's easy to imagine large chunks of the game as being some kind of fever dream, and that's basically what happens in this famous theory. It's the details rather than the big picture that make it creepy. I don't want to dwell on it too much because it's easily one of the most well-known fan theories out there. But the website for it is still around, and the theory still gets trotted out all the time, so we have to mention it. And also, Squall is actually dead. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, @FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time, right here on Gameranx.